Welcome back to another episode of Let's Stay In.
I'm Anna, and this is Mark.
Now, before we get into today's episode, we got to give you that annoying reminder. Make sure you like, subscribe, download, comment. If there's a button, make sure you click it. Somehow, I think that helps us out.
With that being said, let's just jump right in.
Taylor, how are we doing?
I am doing well. I feel like I'm finally getting into the swing of things and like feeling like a human again.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what has caused this? I mean, I know, but our listeners don't know.
Yeah, my son is a year and a half old. He's my first child, and it was quite an adjustment having a baby for the first time. And I feel like it kind of hit me maybe 2 months ago that it was like I just woke up one day and I was like, wow, I feel like myself for like no particular reason other than the fact that I just woke up and I'm like, yeah, this feels normal again.
Oh my God, that must have been such a relief.
Yeah, it was. Postpartum was not in the slightest easy, like at all.
No.
So that definitely was a journey.
Well, before we dive into that, because I was
going to say, I have so many questions immediately.
Yeah.
We always just start diving into things, and we always got to start off with like a 30-second spiel about yourself. Okay. But also, real quick, move your mic a little bit closer to your mouth. Just like that. Boom. Perfect.
If I'm not spitting on it?
Yeah.
Not,
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Spit on it.
Hawk 2 on that thing. So real quick, give like a 30-second spiel about yourself. Who is Taylor for anybody who's listening and doesn't know who you are yet?
This is kind of like a modeling like audition.
No, it literally
where it's
is.
like,
Front side
hi,
back.
my name is Taylor. I'm 5'11". I live in Los Angeles, California.
Yep.
So yeah, my name is Taylor. I have a wonderful husband. His name's Andy. We have a beautiful son. He's a year and a half. His name is Max. He's our first son. We live in Los Angeles. I grew up in Orange County, played soccer my whole life. It's like, I feel like I have to mention that because it was just such a big part of my life. My husband also played soccer. He played professionally. We now live in LA and I model. That's how I met both of you guys. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm here today. So I've been modeling for, I hate realizing that I've been modeling for about 10 years because it makes me feel so old. So I've been modeling for about 10 years now. And yeah, I'm a stay-at-home mom and a model.
There we go. Yeah. So, so this episode, we're going to get into all the nitty-gritty about being a mom because I know I've got a ton of questions. I know Anna has a trillion questions. So,
I could have brought Max and we could have done like a full baby course.
Honestly, we should do
we'll do another day of like how you guys would take care of a toddler.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, that would
oh my God.
That'll be part 2. That'll be part 2.
I'll just be holding him out like this.
And you're like, what do I do now?
Yeah. Yeah, so Anna, where should we start?
Okay, wait, no. So you were saying how you one day just woke up and you're someone that like we've talked about postpartum before, and you were like, I don't think you were somebody that, I don't know how to say this. Like, what were the mood changes, the mental changes, body changes? Like, tell us how postpartum was for you.
Yeah, so postpartum kind of was an unexpected beast. Pregnancy, I kind of knew and expected everything that was going to happen. Myself, I expected that nursing, breastfeeding was going to be the toughest part because I nursed my son. And I did not prepare myself for the mental and physical changes that happened postpartum. Mm-hmm. And when it happened, it's kind of like, if you don't talk to someone about it, you don't know what's happening. So you just feel crazy. Mm-hmm. And it would be like some days I would just have an insane sense of anger for no given reason other than the fact of like, I am tired. I'm
for no reason,
sleep deprived. I don't know what's going on with my child. He's screaming like, I'm in close proximities with my husband and like he is sleep deprived. But it would be like a type of anger that wouldn't be justified for that experience. And I was just like, what in the world? Like, why am I feeling like this? And sadly, or maybe great discovery was that I saw it on TikTok and someone was talking about postpartum rage. And I was just like, that's what I'm feeling. I'm like, postpartum rage. And there's so many caveats and like little intricacies of postpartum that I never in a million years expected because my mom never talked to me about it, and no fault to her. I think she is kind of in the same boat as me, and as many other mothers, is like, you're just fighting to survive. So you're not like storing things in memory to be like, I need to share this with somebody, or I need to remember this. A lot of it is forgotten because you're just like in fight or flight. And once you get through that tough moment, you're like, okay, cool, we're moving on to the next one. So a lot of it, I think, is kind of for my mom forgotten.
It's also case by case. Like, yes. I feel like everybody has such a different experience. And when I saw you throughout your pregnancy, you were the most chill pregnant woman ever. You were like, I'm barely, like, I didn't even realize I'm pregnant. Like, I forget I'm pregnant. Like, I felt like you didn't really share any like weird physical things. You looked amazing. You seemed totally just Taylor.
Yes.
And so I'm sure giving birth and then having that experience, you're like, wait, this all was supposed to be so easy.
I feel like a lot of it too. And I think this kind of goes into like just my body growing up. I never had, and sorry, Mark, but I never had like tough periods. I never had like mood swings. I was always just a very even keeled person. Like, and we talked about this just a second ago. Like, you don't cry a lot. I don't cry a lot. Like, I'm just a very chill person. So you
having rage, I can't even fathom you feeling anything other than being like, hey, I'm like ready to like work and like I'm in a good mood. I'm Taylor.
Yeah. And like I've told you about like the drama I've had in my life. Those things, like I've just been kind of like, okay, whatever. Like, it's a situation I have to deal with and we're moving forward. It's never been a mood altering or type of personality changing experience. So I've always just been a very even keeled person. In, like you said, during my pregnancy, I didn't have any cravings. I didn't have any weird feelings. My body was just me, but I was getting fatter. And
you were growing a child.
Mama was thick. Like we're not going to put any sugar coating on this. Like, so just to give you an idea.
She was pregnant in the butt and stomach. That was wild.
Yes. At some point it was my butt and my belly were competing. And like every day my husband and I would look at it and we're like, which one's bigger? And like some days my butt would be bigger and some days my belly would be bigger. And like they both were just going at it. But when I gave birth, and it kind of was like a rolling joke with my husband and his friends, was like, if I was going to break 200 pounds. And like I said, I am such an, like, none of this stuff offends me. I think it's funny. Like, I've never had like any weight issues the entire time. I was like, if I need to be 200 pounds, then that's what my baby needs. Like, I'll eventually lose the weight. There's not going to be any issue with that. So I had no issue with being 200 pounds. I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. So like my final weigh-in, I think it was like 199.9. It was like, I was like a 0.1. So Andy texted like his group and they were like, no, she didn't break 200.
Eat her a sandwich.
Well, wait, I gotta ask, if you don't mind me asking, you can tell me that you don't want to give this information. What were you weighing beforehand?
So before I got pregnant, I was probably, and I don't weigh myself often. I kind of go off of how I feel and look. And because I modeled, because I played soccer, I'm very in tune with, like, I could literally look at my body and like tell by my abs and tell by my legs, like how much I weigh. I didn't weigh myself, but my guess would be I was probably around maybe 145 to like 147. So I basically almost gained like 60 pounds.
And you're 5'11".
Yeah.
I'm a very tall girl.
Tall. So, my doctor at first was very alarmed with how much weight I had gained. And she was like, oh, like, I think we're going to need to like, not necessarily put you on a diet, but just be very mindful that like, we're not developing gestational diabetes, which is something that women can develop while they're having.
What is that?
So it's diabetes while you're pregnant. And it's just because you're gaining so much weight in a short period of time that your body can develop diabetes. And it's something that you just have to be mindful of when you're gaining weight, because obviously you want to gain weight so you can, nourish your baby and just be healthy. But at the same time, there is a level of too much weight gain that you don't want to, enter into, just so that you can be healthy and so that the baby can be healthy. So for a while, my doctor was like, you are kind of gaining a lot of weight. And then she was like, wait a second, like looked back at my record and was like, I'm pretty sure you started off at 145. She was like, my guess is you were underweight and that now your body is kind of adjusting and correcting to how much weight it actually needs. So I wasn't, and by being underweight, like my husband has asked me about this before, I was not I don't count calories. Like, I'm not really addicted to working out. Like, I do a workout a day, or prior to pregnancy. I was a fitness model, so it was kind of my job. I worked at a gym. I enjoy eating healthy. So it was just kind of the lifestyle I was living. And so my body was more of a byproduct of what I was doing rather than I was trying to get myself to be that. And at the time I was also coaching at 2 different gyms. And one of the gyms I actually had to work out and physically do the class with everybody else. So I was working out on top of doing that, on top of coaching classes. I was overly active, but it was the jobs that I was doing. So anyways, my doctor basically was like, yeah, I think that you were underweight and your body is just overcorrecting and getting you to the weight that you should be at while you're pregnant. And it seems more drastic because if you weren't so active, you probably would have been at 155. So instead of gaining 60 pounds, now you're only gaining 50 pounds, which is in the range of what's healthy for my height and age and all that kind of stuff. When
you were pregnant, I guess, what was your expectation of what the experience was going to be like versus what the actual experience was like?
I genuinely thought it was going to be harder because we have so many babies in our family. So on my husband's side, we have not including my son, we have 9 nieces and nephews. And then on my side of the family, we just have my lovely nephew. So in total, we have 12 nieces and nephews across both sides of the family. And I've gotten so many different experiences from my sister-in-laws. So I genuinely expected it to be harder. I expected to have the morning sickness. I expected to have more maybe mood swings, more pain, more not sleeping through the night, more aversions to food and smells. And I had none of that. So it was great. I think of it in a way of I'm thankful that I had such an easy pregnancy, but I also think that attributed to why postpartum was so hard, because it was kind of I unintentionally expected it to be as easy and as painless as my pregnancy was. But my pregnancy, the only issue I had was I had really bad heartburn. And so the only thing that would help was drinking milk. But I attest, I cannot stand milk. For some reason, I just can't stand it. So I would drink chocolate milk, which is probably why I also gained 60 pounds.
I love chocolate milk.
The chocolate milk is what really got me.
I don't blame you.
Is there any advice you would give, if somebody is, let's just say they just got pregnant, they're hey, I got this whole journey ahead of me. Is there anything that you did that you would give advice or recommend to, new mothers now about kind of how to go about the pregnancy journey?
Yeah, I feel in general, my pregnancy was so easy, so I feel I'm probably a really bad example or a bad person to be maybe giving advice on it, because I didn't go through the normal struggles that you go through. But one thing that I think really was good for me was just staying active and eating healthy. And I know that's extremely hard to do while you're pregnant because you're so tired and you have so many cravings. But one thing that did make me feel good was as I was gaining weight, I didn't necessarily feel bad about myself. And I think a fraction of it, a lot of it was obviously, yes, I'm gaining weight because of the baby. But there is a little bit of a self-accountability to the weight gain, where I did feel even though I'm gaining weight, I do know that I'm still, being healthy, being active to the capacity of what I was able to do during each stage of pregnancy.
Did you feel when you were pregnant at all that you had to, how did that, did it affect your marriage in any way in terms of now you guys, in the time that you guys have been married previously, you're just focusing on each other, right?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you have this, you have a baby growing inside of you, right? And so now there's a third person that you have to think about. Yeah. And so did it cause any, whether positive or negative things in your own marriage that you had to kind of keep a conscious mind about as you were going through pregnancy?
Yeah. So I would say to that question, that is more applicable to postpartum because a lot of things change postpartum. And it's also so nice. My sister-in-law is a therapist. So
Nice.
I feel like I have a plug to like just ask her questions about things. And when we get into postpartum, we can talk more in depth. But when I had asked her just, about postpartum, about marriage and all that kind of stuff, she said that in general, postpartum and having a baby is one of the biggest stressors on a marriage that through people's lives is the most common stressor that marriages go through. So we can talk more about it, but pre-Max and giving birth, no, Andy was so excited to be a dad. I was so excited to be a mom, also terrified at the same exact time. And, there wasn't really any stress or like worry or anything. It was just a lot of excitement and just like preparation for when our son was born.
Okay. Well, I know Anna really wants to dive into postpartum.
Yes, I know she,
but
I want to know, like, did you feel ready when you got the positive on the pregnancy test? Like, were you trying? I know Andy was like,
Andy's been trying. So, well, I guess it's more so like the backstory of my husband and I, not that the backstory is the most important thing, but it gives a little bit more context. My husband and I met when I was 19. I'm 30. Gosh, how old am I? 31? I'm 31 right now. We met in college. We got engaged when I was 23. We got married when I was 24 and a half, 25. And I finally got pregnant when I was 30. So he and I, by the time I got pregnant, had been married for 7 years. He has been wanting kids for the longest time. And I've been also, my entire life, knew that I want kids. That was never a question. It was more so timing and figuring out when was the right time. And I know parents will probably watch this and be like, haha, like there is no timing in having children. Yeah. You can never, it can never be the right time and it can never be the wrong time is what I've figured out. But it was very difficult to make that decision. A lot of it had to do with my upbringing. And it was something that Andy and I had a lot of talking through and trying to figure out, because for years he would be like, let's have a baby. And I'd be like, not right now. Not because I didn't want one, but because genuinely like there was just like a block inside of me and I didn't know what it was. I kind of attributed it to modeling because I was like, modeling is so physical. It's my body. I can't do my job if I'm pregnant. So a lot of it, I think I used modeling kind of as like the placeholder, but like more so that I thought about it. I was like, it's a much stronger feeling than modeling. Like, and it just so happened that my dad had passed away during this time and Andy and I were just talking about it and it kind of hit me. Like I was just like, and by no means was my upbringing bad. Like I had a great upbringing. Like it's just, we had complications because of my dad. And I don't want to like drag my dad through the mud or anything, but he struggled with addiction. He was not always the best father. He was not always the best husband. So a lot of my insecurities about having kids was for some odd reason thinking that I was going to replicate my childhood. Mm-hmm. And in so many ways, like my childhood was amazing. Like my mom, like we can talk about my mom for hours.
She's the best human ever.
She is literally an angel. She is the reason that I am who I am today. And unfortunately, my dad is the reason why I have so many like reservations and, you know, hang-ups on having kids. Because it's kind of like when you go through like, you know, just hard times, it worries you that like if it happens to you, like what are the chances that it could happen to your kids? And it's like knowing that just is like, okay, I need to make sure that everything's perfect, that everything's fine. And the reality is nothing's ever going to be perfect. Nothing's ever going to be just fine how you expect it. So I'm so thankful for Andy because he constantly was the pressing force and not in a way that like made me feel uncomfortable. It was always very encouraging and very supportive. And kind of when we worked through that giant mountain of emotions, we decided like, okay, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be like history that repeats itself. We are different people. I, by no means, there's a lot of things that I'm similar to my dad, but I'm not my dad. So it's not going to happen. And once we and I felt comfortable just coming to terms with that, then we were very much like, okay, let's have a baby. And, maybe not stupidly, I was just very much like, oh, it's going to take us a couple months. Like, I've had friends who've tried for 6-7 months and like, they finally get pregnant. So in my mind, I was like, I have time to like really accept like getting pregnant. And we got pregnant in the 2nd month. So when I was pregnant, I was like, oh shit. I was like, this happened
I just got okay
faster
with this
than I expected. So I think also a lot of the reason why I was so chill during pregnancy was because it was like, in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm not pregnant.
Yeah.
Like there's no way I'm pregnant.
That didn't happen yet.
It didn't happen yet. Like I'm still processing all this jumble going on in my brain right now. So when I finally gave birth, it genuinely, like, I can't even put into words how wild giving birth is, because it feels like a magic trick. Like it genuinely feels like there is no physical way that a child is about to pop out of my body.
Yeah.
Like there's no way that's going to happen. I'm like, I don't know how they're going to get them out, but like, it's not how you think it's going to happen.
Did it hurt?
Yeah, I was going to say, we need a rating and review. So, out of 10, how painful was birth?
What did you think it was going to be and what was it?
I thought it was going to be a 10.
Okay.
I got an epidural, so, that God immediately makes it easier. But I was on a run with Andy this past week. I'm running now, which is like, God, I hate it.
Gross.
Yeah, same. So I was on a run and I was just telling Andy, as I'm like huffing and puffing between each breath, trying to talk to him as I'm running. And I was like, gosh, this just feels so hard. And he was like, Tay, you've done harder things. And I was like, honestly, right now, this run is harder than giving birth. And I was like, because I do not have an epidural to get me through this. I'm like, so this run 100% is harder than giving birth. If I didn't do an epidural, 100% it would have been a completely different story. But I think I got to 6 centimeters. So just for reference, you go to 10 centimeters and then you're ready to push. So I got to 6 centimeters. And then I was like, okay, I think I'm ready for an epidural, and then got an epidural.
Does 6 centimeters mean like the baby's 6 centimeters out of you? What does that mean? I'm a guy. I got to ask these questions.
Opening.
That's her opening.
Oh, okay.
6 centimeters doesn't feel that big.
No. So what's crazy is like there was this one like meme that I saw on Instagram before I gave birth, and it referenced the size of dilation. So it was like a centimeter is, this probably wasn't it, but like the tip of a pencil. The 2 centimeters is this. 10 centimeters was the size of a Ben & Jerry's ice cream little canister.
Wait,
okay.
Really?
That kind of adds up.
If I would looked at a Ben & Jerry's, I'd have thought that was like 4 inches.
Yeah, no, it's 10 centimeters. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, your baby is like rubber too. Like they're being squished out because like their brain, they're not their brain. Their skull isn't formed. The plates aren't fused. So the plates kind of will mold and mush to get out.
Do you know the movie Coneheads?
Yes.
My mom said that's what I look like when I came out.
A lot of
like
babies are conehead. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you kind of just have to smush it down.
Yeah. So Max actually kind of had a little bit of a scary like birth story. If I think about it, it'll freak me out, but like nothing happened. He's completely healthy and everything was fine. But my water broke, and this was something that I learned. I never realized it. Water breaking isn't like a gush. It is for some people, but not for everybody. I woke up because I thought I peed myself, and then I just went to the bathroom, and then there was like a salmon color in the toilet, and I was like, this is weird. And I wasn't going to wake anybody up because it was at like 4 a.m. And my doctor had been telling me for weeks, she was like, you're showing no signs of labor. We're probably going to have to induce you. And induction basically means they pump me with like hormones or whatever to like get my body moving. And so I was in very much the mindset that I was going to have to be induced because my doctor was very adamant that I was like not dilated. I was not having any symptoms of like pre-labor anything. So my water broke, and I had been told like, this isn't happening because I think I was 38 weeks. And my doctor was kind of like, I think we're going to have to induce you at like 41 weeks. So I was like, okay, it's not going to happen for like another 2 weeks. So it's 4 a.m. I'm sitting there looking at the toilet and I was like, this doesn't seem right. And then I was like, I'll probably just go to sleep and like, you know, we'll handle it in the morning. And then something in my mind was like, you should probably wake Andy up.
You're probably having your baby now.
And so I go and like kind of stand at his bedside and I'm like, oh, he's going to be so mad at me if I'm not in labor. And I'm like, just like gently shoving him. And I was like, I think my water broke. And immediately he shoots up and like hits my side of the bed. And he was like, it's not wet. And I was like, I know it's not wet, but I think my water broke. And then he like hits the bed again and he was like, but there's no water here. And I was like, okay, but go look at the toilet.
He's like, do I have to?
And then he and I, it's like, I laughed so hard because it's like, you just like revert back to being like an 18-year-old kid that like knows nothing. And he and I are just standing there like looking at the toilet like, what should we do? And my mom lives with us. And he was like, we should wake Tree up. And I was like, no, I don't think so. And he was like, no, I think we should wake Tree up. So I was like, okay. So like I go wake my mom up and I was like, hey, I think my water broke. Immediately she goes into like, all right, we're calling the doctor. We're doing this. And I was like, no, don't call the doctor. They're just going to tell me that it's not that big a deal. And I was just so set on the fact that like my water didn't break, that my doctor was right, and that this just wasn't happening. And so she calls the doctor. I'm back in bed. Like I got back into bed and was like about to fall asleep. And my mom was like, Taylor, talk to them on the phone. And she hands me the phone and I was like, hi, I think my water broke, but I really don't think it's anything. I was like, it looks like a salmon color. And the nurse on the phone starts laughing. And I was like, what? And she was like, sweetie, your water broke. You're probably going to have a baby today. And I was just like, are you serious?
I don't have time for
and
this.
She was like, yeah, you need to come into the hospital right now. And on top of everything, it was Easter. So like we had all these like plans with our family and everything. So anyways, I, being the planner that I am, had already packed my hospital bag, had everything ready, had everything for Max that I needed. Andy is last minute everything. And he literally, and it's also 4 a.m. So like, he's not a morning person. He is just frozen in, I don't know, contemplation maybe, just standing and staring at the bed. Like he's in his underwear and I'm just zooming around the room trying to grab all the things that we need. And finally I look at him. I was like, if I pass you one more time and you don't move, I'm like, just do something. And he was like, well, I don't know. Like, do I take a shower? Because if I take a shower, then I'm going to be awake. And then if we go to the hospital and like they say that you're not in labor, then I don't want to be awake at 4 a.m. I want to come home and sleep. And I'm just like,
we're thinking about your sleep schedule right now, babe.
Don't care what you do. I'm like, move. If I pass you one more time and you don't move. And so he's like, well, should I take a shower? And he's like looking at my mom with like these puppy dog eyes. And she's like, I think you should take a shower.
Just frozen.
He goes and like takes a shower. And then, you know, we go to the hospital. They're like, yep, you're in labor. Everything with labor was totally fine. I had to get Pitocin, which just helps speed up labor process. I finally got my epidural. Then they come in. Which I didn't realize the nurse and like my mom and Andy were going to deliver Max. Like Andy
Wait, what do you mean?
So that all hands on deck.
So Andy had one leg. My mom had the other leg. And the nurse.
Your legs?
Yes.
Oh, I like the baby. You're just pulling it out. So they're your stirrups?
Yeah. So
I hate
because
that.
I had my water break, they couldn't check me for dilation because it's like a risk of infection, which I didn't realize that. So the whole day, I think I got checked twice, which they definitely were supposed to check me more often, but there was miscommunication. So for the longest time, I was feeling a lot of pressure. And since I had an epidural, I wasn't feeling the full extent of like the contractions. I was just feeling a lot of pressure. And I loved my nurse. She was very stern and kind of like militant, but like I definitely broke her and like she started liking me by the end of the day. But I was just asking her about pooping. I was like, hey, her name was Min. I was like, Min, just like let me know, like am I going to poop? And she was like, you might. And I was like, I'm not embarrassed. I'm like, I'm not worried about it. I'm like, I just want to know. And I was like, I'm saying this too because like I feel like I'm going to poop right now. And I was like, but I don't know. And I was like, I wouldn't know. So like, you're going to have to tell me.
Wait, I got to ask, like,
A lot of people shit themselves, Mark.
well, do you just
Mm-hmm.
you can't go to the bathroom, can you? In that moment,
No, you can't go to the
so
bathroom.
you should just shit yourself.
Well, you don't poop. You don't poop because you just have to use the restroom. You poop because when the baby comes out, it presses on your colon and poop comes out.
Okay.
God,
So-
that's such a good laxative. That probably
Yeah.
feels
So
good.
it's like,
You're sick.
yeah.
That is, you're like looking so slim.
So
after.
it's just because like the baby's pressing that you end up pooping. And my sister-in-law has
Do you
had,
wear like a diaper?
no, you don't, you can't
you
wear.
poop on the table.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
so you
then
just
what?
So you just lay in it?
So they'll clean you.
Oh, okay.
I don't like that. I don't want to be
Yeah.
cleaned
No,
by
you
anybody.
can't. The thing is you can't like, especially if your water's broken, like you can't wear underwear.
Did you do you make eye contact with them when they're clean? Like when they're
Okay,
cleaning
so
you?
the fact is, I'm spread eagle, and strangers are just coming in,
No.
and I was just like, oh, okay, so like we're gonna do this. I'm like, you can at least introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Taylor, and here's my vagina.
I was like, let's just break the ice. Like, what's your favorite color? I'm like,
God.
yeah, so that was definitely a little alarming. But anyways, Min is now just gonna help get Max out of me, and I pushed twice, and then immediately she was like, yeah, no, we need help. And I was like, okay, yeah, like get the doctors in here. A team of probably 10 people came in, and I thought it was normal because I'm like, of course, I'm giving a baby. You want everybody here. Like, that's just, little did I know it was because Max was stuck and was in like a very dangerous situation where he could have had like severe nerve damage and all that kind of stuff. So his collarbone was stuck on my pelvic bone. And in order to get him out, they had to use basically like blunt force. And I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a high probability that he could have broken his clavicle, which would then turn into nerve damage and all that kind of stuff. So he was basically stuck inside of me. My doctor was there. The doctor that was supposed to deliver Max was there. We had 2 pediatricians. We had 4 nurses. And then we had Andy and my mom. We had a lot of doctors in there. And they were all kind of like standing, staring at me, whispering to one another. And now in retrospect, I can see everything happening. But in the moment, I was just kind of like, cool. They're just, strategizing how to get Max out. And basically what they were talking about was figuring out if they wanted to do an emergency C-section or try to deliver vaginally. So the doctor that ended up delivering Max, I had met that morning. And it's just so funny because he was the youngest one out of all of them. And assuming that he had the least experience, like commanded the room and was like telling people what to do and was just like, nope, I'm going in. We're getting the baby out. Literally stuck both of his hands inside of me, which at this point, I'm so thankful I had an epidural because if I didn't have an epidural, I can't even imagine like the type of pain that I would be in. And just yanking on me because he has Max in his hands.
The head?
His shoulders.
Oh, okay.
So he is full on like, I think his hands were probably this far. So like 2 hands this far inside of me.
They do that with cows.
Yeah, exactly. So finally pulls Max out and like the feeling of like the tugging, it was so stinking weird because like my whole body was just jerking. It was like he was almost going to pull me off the table because he was pulling with like such force. And then finally gets Max out. They rush him over and the pediatricians take him. Like Andy was supposed to cut the umbilical cord, but with the circumstance at hand, they were like, we have to make sure he's okay, that nothing's broken, all that kind of stuff. He was fine. Everybody was fine. But yeah, it was so crazy. And I didn't realize the extent of the situation until after the fact. So like, I'm so thankful for like how professional they were and like how quickly they acted and how just, great they were all at their jobs because it could have been so much worse and it wasn't. So
thank goodness.
Yes, literally so thankful.
Okay. I got to ask you this because I feel like, okay, I'm going to sound like a whole idiot here for a quick moment.
It's not the first time. Hey,
when I change my taillights on my car,
Okay.
I feel a great sense of accomplishment.
Yes.
Can you describe how you felt after birthing a child?
I didn't.
That's a good question.
I didn't think it was real. Like, I very much was in shock. Like, everybody has that moment where they're like crying and like, oh my gosh, my baby. like they handed me Max and I just looked at them like a deer in the headlights. Like I was like, you're going to let me hold him? Like, you're not even going to like give me a manual. Like, you're not even going to be like, you should hold his head up and like, make sure you don't do this. Like they just handed me him. And I was just like, what do I do with this baby? And the crazy thing is I've held so many kids. We have 10 nieces and nephews in my family. Like I've changed so many diapers. I've held so many newborns. Like holding children is very like normal and like I feel very comfortable. But when Max was born, I was just in pure shock. Like I didn't cry. Like I didn't necessarily feel emotion. And I also feel like this is something we can talk about later on because it kind of bleeds into postpartum. But like I didn't necessarily feel that instant connection with him. Mm-hmm. Like I was just like, this is somebody's baby,
which is a lot more common than you realize. And I feel like we're pushed this narrative of there's this magical, instant connection. And I think that's such a mistake because I've talked to so many new moms who feel like there's something wrong with them because they didn't have that moment. In all actuality, it differs from case to case, and there's nothing wrong with you for not having that. You just had a traumatic birth.
Yes.
And when you connect is really no one's business, and there's no formula of when that should happen.
Yeah, for sure. And I think because so many of the moms in my family are just like they wear their heart on their sleeve, and like they are just the best moms. And I've seen their reactions to having babies. I was like, I'm not an emotional person. I've never been an emotional person. So I was like, maybe this will be like my moment that like, I'll be overcome with like emotions. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's my very like typical response. I was just like, oh, okay. All right, we're doing this now.
Check this off the list.
I'm like, he's here.
Okay. So I've never heard of postpartum rage. I only have heard of anxiety, depression, even like postpartum OCD, things like that. What were some things that you implemented when you started feeling this, and how did you know that you were feeling this?
I didn't do anything, unfortunately.
Just screamed.
I just let myself feel. No, I got out of the house a lot. If I stayed cooped up, I probably would have been a lot worse. And like I said, my mom lives at our house, and so she was great at just being like, let's just go to the store and walk around. Like, we don't need to do anything crazy, or, let's just go for a walk outside, or let's sit in the backyard. So I got out of the house a lot. I changed my scenery a lot, which for me was very helpful because it would mainly be the things that got me mad would be kind of like parental duties of like feeling like Andy wasn't doing enough. And it's very unfair, but also very, I guess, acceptable or like common or valid. Yeah, valid would be a better word to feel those things because there's so many things, especially early on, that only a mom can do. And there's so much just responsibility. And especially as a new mom, it's like I was so overwhelmed. Like I just felt like I was drowning, and not necessarily in the sense of like, I didn't feel any type of like postpartum depression or anything like that. I think I'm just unfortunately a perfectionist who was like, I'm just gonna wing it and I'm gonna get it right the first time. Mm-hmm. And when I wasn't getting it right the first time, it was very difficult for me to be like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't think I'm succeeding, and I'm struggling with trying to nurse him, and my family's here like watching me. Like I feel like I have an audience like about to like critique me. And I also think that was really hard because right after I gave birth, my mother-in-law and father-in-law flew in, and they saw Max, and they stayed with us for I think like a week and a half or 2 weeks. And in the moment I had no issues with it, and I didn't have any and I still don't have any issues with it, but it was very hard for me to connect with Max because there are so many people who wanted to see him.
You have no one-on-one time just to like absorb this new circumstance in your own surroundings and adjust.
And so that to me was in retrospect, I was able to look back and be like, okay, next baby, like I would love for everyone to be there in the moment. But it's so difficult to, and I think I struggle with this where I want everyone to experience what I'm experiencing. Like, and sometimes it's at the expense of my own feelings, where it's like, I want everyone to see Max right when he's born. And I kind of sacrifice my own feelings to be like, well, that means that I don't really get that much time with him, or I'm now losing experiences with him. So to me, that was also difficult, that I realized down the road that I was like, oh, you know, this was another big reason why I didn't bond with Max right away, because there was 5 adults in the house and everybody wanted to see him and everyone wanted to love him. And I have no issues with that. It's more so just the, like, you know, going through and like just trying to figure out like how everything led to be. You know what I mean?
Of course. You didn't know what you needed either. Like,
exactly.
There's no way
yeah.
of
There's in
that.
hindsight's 2020.
Absolutely.
So it's like, yeah, maybe next baby will do things a little different, but I've bonded with him now, so there's no problem.
Was there a specific moment that you can remember where there was that magical moment of connection, or did it happen? Was it a slow transition of getting to know each other?
Yeah, I think it was a slow transition of getting to know each other. And I think a lot of it was more so me becoming more confident as a mom. And I feel bad saying that, because I never want my relationship with my children to be like reflecting how I feel about myself. But You're
human.
But I do feel like as I started feeling more confident in myself, I was able to focus on the little things and like enjoy spending moments with him where I didn't feel like I had this, you know, cloud over my head, you know? So I think in that sense, once I was able to kind of just let go of a lot of stuff, I was able to just be more present and like start connecting with him.
Did you feel I feel like, again, when it comes to motherhood, there's no like handbook, right?
No.
Like nobody goes into it. And I guess this goes for fatherhood too.
Yeah.
There's no handbook. So I've talked to buddies who are new fathers or who are expecting fathers and things like that. And it's always a conversation of like, man, I just, a lot of times I don't know what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm learning on the fly and everything like that. And I think there's a lot of people struggle with the sense of guilt, right?
Yeah.
Of maybe I feel like I should feel this way, or I feel like I should be doing this, but it's not, this isn't happening, you know, whatever. So did you ever feel a sense of guilt, whether it was, you know, postpartum or, you know, at some other point in life where you felt, or some other period after pregnancy where you felt some sense of guilt of like, I feel like this should be happening and this is not happening? Or like at times, maybe when you started to focus like more on yourself afterwards, like when you start to get back into your routine and things like that, did you start to feel a sense of guilt of like, I should be doing something as a mother and not necessarily doing something for me?
Yeah. Motherhood is all guilt.
Mom shame is huge.
And what's funny, or I mean, not funny, but interesting is for myself, I never felt external pressures. Like I never felt like the world being like, you need to be like this. I'm just very hard on myself to begin with. So I don't need anyone else to do it for me, because I do it right for myself. Yeah. So a lot of it was me not meeting the expectations that I had set for myself. And a lot of it also was frustration with my body, because since I nursed my son, and also this was another big issue with postpartum that I had, was so many people told me, they're like, you know, you'll just snap back. Like you are so fit. And granted, like, yes, I was the fittest I ever was, like prior to having Max. Everybody, and not in like a mean way. Like everyone was very encouraging and very sweet. Like I never took it, you know, in a mean way, but I had created this expectation of what I was supposed to look like after I had Max. And also so many of my sister-in-laws, family members, you know, friends who had children and nursed were like, oh, as soon as you start nursing, like the weight is just going to fall off you, because you lose so much weight as soon as you start nursing. Like you burn so many calories as soon as you start nursing. I'm still nursing my son and I still have weight to lose. And I realized that my body is not like everybody else's. And my body actually does the opposite while I nurse. My body holds on to weight. So it was so difficult wanting to lose weight, but also wanting to do what's best for my son, in my opinion, nursing him, and just struggling with giving myself grace to be like, you don't need to do it right now. It will happen eventually, but there is no timeline. And I think that's what was also difficult is postpartum, when you think of your body and you think of the snapback, it feels like there's just like a clock ticking down. Like you hit these milestones of like 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 9 months. Like 9 months to me, for some odd reason, was such a big milestone for my son, because it's like 9 months in, 9 months out. It's like, in reality, it took him 9 months to grow inside of your body, 9 months to gain the weight. So like, why can't it take 9 months to lose the weight? And when I didn't lose the weight in 9 months, I was just like, are you serious? And by like no means do I think I look bad or anything like that. It's just, it's hard to have the, I guess, framework of what you used to look like and then expecting yourself to get back to that when your body has changed forever. Like my body will never, my body is not what it used to be in so many good ways. But it's hard to have that expectation for myself to expect to get back to where I was, and the pressure that I put on myself to do it. And then not being realistic with these expectations. So when I fail, I'm so mean to myself, you know, like I'm just like, are you serious? Like you're definitely probably not working out enough. You're not eating healthy enough. And like my postpartum, like I've definitely have been mindful of what I eat in very healthy ways. Like I don't think I've ever had any unhealthy relationships with food or working out. So like everything has been done in moderation. And so when I just don't get there, it is just so earth shattering.
Well, what once was isn't always what's best.
Yes.
And I think we forget that as we get older, and we think, and I think even with having a baby, I could assume that everything around you has changed.
Yes.
So your body changing on top of that is just one more thing.
So hard.
Nothing is what it was.
Yeah.
It's like you don't really recognize yourself when it comes to your emotions. You don't physically recognize yourself your day to day.
Yeah.
It's almost like post-baby or pre-baby, post-baby.
It's a different person.
And it's a totally different person.
It's a different person, and it's hard to detach from like that connection.
You have to mourn the loss of someone that you once was and you got to know so well.
Yeah. So it's definitely getting to know this new body, my new body's limitations, my new body's wants, needs, all that kind of stuff. And just learning to be kind to myself because in the past I've always had, I wouldn't say I've had a negative self-talk. I just have had a very stern self-talk, like very matter of fact.
You're disciplinarian when it comes to yourself. You're very disciplined.
Very disciplinarian. It's like, it has a lot to do with soccer. And immediately transitioning out of college right into modeling, I just kind of like shifted that exact mentality, right, and applied it to this new job. So I've just been very stern with myself and very matter of fact. And you kind of can't do that when you're a mom, because what I do now directly affects my son in the sense of like, if I am being crazy with my diet, that's going to affect my milk supply, and I can't do that. So there's a lot of just realizing that it's not about me anymore.
Well, it's kind of a beautiful thing when your life isn't selfish. And I don't mean selfish in the way of a negative term. I think selfish in the way of like, you know, you're just living for yourself. And I think when you have to make decisions for somebody else, it changes your life in every other way.
For sure.
And I feel like your confidence and your mental health, everything would almost improve because it's just not all about you. Like your world doesn't revolve around you all the time.
Yes.
And so there's ultimately less pressure.
Yes. Less pressure, but at the same time,
More pressure too.
More pressure. Because it's just, you know, that little voice on the inside that for some odd reason keeps coming back, and it's like, you haven't worked out in a week? What have you been doing? And then the other voice that's like, what do you mean? What have I been doing? I've been trying to wrangle a feral animal
Yeah.
that I'm exhausted and I'm trying to eat and like, you know, make sure he's healthy and not chopping off an arm. Like
Totally. What are the biggest changes that you've noticed in your marriage since giving birth?
So we are a lot better at communication now, which communication, I mean, in any relationship is like the most difficult part. And like I said, like my sister-in-law kindly informed me that having a baby is one of the most stressful times for a marriage. And the first year is like, it's so difficult because you're so tired. You're overwhelmed by newness. Everything's new. And when you think of everything being new, you think of it like, oh, this is cool. This is a new experience. But sometimes it can be really overwhelming. Like just newness in general is just overwhelming. And my husband having expectations for what he expects out of me. And then I have my own expectations for what I expect out of me. And at the beginning, a lot of times those expectations were not on the same page. And what has been great is my husband and I have had a lot of really good conversations where we have kind of talked about our own moms and their parenting styles and how they were as mothers. And we've realized, and it's very interesting, but Andy is a fifth child. So his mom raised him like a fifth child. Mm-hmm. I was a second child. And so I was raised like a second child. And a fifth child and a second child are very different. Like you are probably a lot more, you know, laid back and chill with your fifth child versus my mom. And my mom on top of it too, because of my dad, was very uptight and very, not uptight in a bad way.
Hypervigilant?
She was hypervigilant and was afraid of getting in trouble.
Of course.
So she constantly parented in that manner. So she was like, let's make sure you don't get hurt. Let's make sure you're always safe. Like, not quite a helicopter mom, but was just very like hyper aware of everything.
My mom was also hyper aware. Yeah.
So we had completely different upbringings. And Andy and I have had to have a lot of conversations about our expectations, and not necessarily that my upbringing was the best or that his upbringing was the best, but trying to find a happy medium that works for the both of us and like still embodies like our goals and ultimately our core beliefs. Mm-hmm.
What do you wish? Because I know when it comes to pregnancy, when it comes to childbirth, when it comes to being a parent, again, there's no handbook. There's no like, you know, you can only plan so much, right? Mm-hmm. But I guess like, what do you wish now, looking back, you would have planned, I guess, like better on, or like conversations you wish took place before you had your son? And then I guess for, you know, expecting mothers and things like that, what sort of conversations would you say to them? Like, hey, have these conversations before you give birth versus waiting until after.
Yeah, I think basically your expectations of like each other, because that's very much what Andy and I struggled with. And just to give an example of like the type of expectations I'm talking about would be like, I would be nursing and I would want to go downstairs because I was like, yeah, I don't want to be up where everybody is. Whereas Andy took that as me being like really uptight and like very like not closed off, but like not easygoing. And so that was one of, and this is like literally a year ago, very early argument that we had, but basically saying that he wanted me to be more easygoing and just be able to nurse Max wherever we are so that it didn't feel like I was constantly requiring like so many, I don't know, like not like special treatment, but like not that I just required so much just to nurse. And after we had the conversation about like how he was raised and how I was raised, it made so much more sense to me because I was like, oh yeah, your mom by her fifth child was just like so casual about nursing. Yeah. And was just kind of like, yeah, my baby needs to get fed. So I'm going to do it right here. And I'm not going to like have any like second thoughts about it, which I then told Andy when we had this conversation. I was like, yeah, I'm like, by my 5th child, if we have 5 children, like I might feel like that too. I'm like, but you need to give me the grace to learn and to gain that experience to get there. I'm like, you can't just expect me to just jump from square 1 to square 5.
Do you think there was a little bit of guilt on his end that because you said that he didn't want you to feel like there was so much required of you? Do you feel like because he couldn't be hands-on in some of those experiences, he's like, I want to be a part of it?
I think so. And I think it was also a really big learning experience for him, because it's like, again, there's no handbook. Nobody's going to tell you how you're going to feel in certain situations. I think for him, he wanted to be so involved because he is such a hands-on dad, and he wants to just be helpful. And a lot of his criticism, for a lack of a better word, comes from the fact that he just wants to be helpful. And he thinks that like by implementing or by sharing his opinion, it's going to help me like just like, you know, feel more relaxed and feel more at ease. But in that moment of me feeling insecure and me feeling, you know, not confident in myself as a mom, hearing like quote unquote criticism, I'm like, oh crap. Like I already feel down. You don't need to make me feel worse.
Totally.
So it was definitely, as always, a miscommunication because he was coming at it from love. I was receiving it as like, you know, more defensive, more like critique-esque. But yeah, it's to go back to your question, I would definitely recommend discussing your expectations out of each other. And also just like fundamental, like milestones, maybe like it might sound stupid, but are you okay with your baby having sugar? Like when would be the right time for them to have like their first bite of ice cream, or when would be the right time for them to have like a cookie? Because these are things you don't talk about or don't think about. And then when it happens and you're in the moment, like you're like, oh, I didn't think about this. And like, I don't want to be the mean person that says like, no. And like, if you struggle with saying no,
yes, yes,
if you struggle with saying no, it's really hard to, feel confident in the moment to be like, we're not going to do this right now, but like maybe in a couple months, you know?
Do you think it's something where, because I feel like, again, going into it, it's so difficult, again, to know how to handle these situations because, again, you don't have any experience doing it until you've done it, right?
Yeah.
And so do you feel like, okay, maybe when we go into having our second child at some point, it's more of just like really, really creating like an open format of communication where it's like, hey, let's not only just like, if we have a thought, let's not just give the thought, but let's also give our explanation to the thought.
Yes.
Because I feel like so much can be taken out of context, or like you say something and you mean it one type of way and then they take it a completely another type of way. And like, again, both of you are just trying to figure out what the fuck to do, right?
Yes.
Like it's such a weird phase of life because you've gone 30 some years of life of focusing on yourself and how to, you know, figure out who you are and what you're all about and everything like that. And then you find your partner and it's like, now I'm figuring out marriage and I'm learning what marriage is all about. And now you're figuring out what parenthood is all about, right? And so with that, it's impossible to not make mistakes, right? But if you don't communicate properly on, I guess, like how you feel on certain types of things and stuff like that, it also can develop resentment, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Which when you talk about like that first year of marriage being like the hardest year of marriage, you know, after having a child, do you think a lot of that just stems back to like, hey, we just have to create a really open format to communicate so that we can like kind of alleviate some of these things moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of it too, I know for a fact that I was not good at communicating how I felt. And just to give both of you an idea, I don't know if you're like aware of like the emotional change that happens to a female after having a baby, but just to give an example, the best analogy I can give is like you open up a factory that's going to make cars and like you order all of these, you know, pieces to make the car. So you make the car and then the car's gone. And now you have all these leftover pieces that it's like, well, what do we do with all of this? And that's exactly what happens with the female body when you make a baby. And it's like you have all these leftover hormones that were necessary to making the baby. But now in just a matter of 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it took Max to come out of my body was dedicated to using all of the parts and pieces it needed and hormones to make him and sustain him and, create him. And within a matter of moments, he's gone. And now there's no baby that these hormones are needed for. So it's like, what do we do with them? And that is what leads a lot of women to feel postpartum depression, because their body has to work through all these extra hormones, and it literally drives you crazy because it's like you just have like an influx like on a million. It's like when you're on your period, like you feel crazy, but like at least your body is dedicating that to something. It's like as soon as the baby's out of your body, you have all these extra hormones that your body, it knows what to do. It knows that it has to get rid of them, but it's the biggest hormonal like influx and change that a woman will ever go through with her entire life.
It is why I don't want kids. Like, yeah, I would say crazy. It's like the top 3 most important. I am so terrified of that because I know for a fact I will be one of those women with postpartum depression and anxiety. Yeah. PMS is already hell for me. I don't think I could take my hormones not having a purpose.
Yeah, it is. And I thankfully never went through postpartum depression, but I have 2 sister-in-laws that did. And it was really difficult for them. And it's hard because you have to know yourself and you also have to hold yourself accountable in the sense of like when somebody asks you, like, are you having postpartum depression? You have to say yes.
Yeah.
Because if you don't say yes, then like it doesn't, nobody can help you because, and I've had sister-in-laws go through the whole period. And then finally at the end of it, when they're out of it, they're like, oh yeah, that was like postpartum depression. And so sometimes it's hard to even recognize because it's like you could 100% be feeling it, but be in denial because you're like, it's not that severe. Like, it's not that crazy. And like, I don't want to, tell, not that you feel shame, but like, I don't want to take it to that level of telling somebody that I have postpartum depression when I don't think it's that serious. But in reality, it's like, no, you're just downplaying it because you don't want to, maybe accept it or like
seem weak or like a failure.
Weak. Like it's just, there's so many, and it's funny too, because like I've thought, I'm like, maybe I've had postpartum depression. I'm like, no, I don't think I did, but I could have, like, I don't know if
you did.
Like, it's, and there's no shame in it, but I'm like, it's just, you just have to be like, yeah, I have it.
You have to be honest.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because that's the only way you can get help.
Yeah, for sure.
What advice would you give, I guess, like after, again, going through this whole experience and whatnot, to expecting fathers? Like, is there anything that they can do to be the best help to their, partner during that time period?
Yeah, I would say being selfless, because it's definitely a period of time where you may feel forgotten in just a very honest way. And it's not going to be forever. You're not always going to feel like that. Like, you need to trust that, like, once your wife comes out of it, like, you guys are going to have that same relationship that you guys had prior to, giving birth. But that it's not going to be about you for a little bit, and to just be as helpful and as supportive. And if things don't really make sense with your wife, like, that's okay. Like, if she's acting out of character, like, that's okay. Like, just have so much grace, have so much understanding, that she doesn't feel like herself. And so she's probably not going to seem like the same person to you.
Great advice. Yeah. To end on like a more positive note. What has been the best, greatest thing about being a mother to you? Your favorite part of it?
Oh my gosh. There's so many amazing parts. As of late, because my son is a toddler and he is walking now, the fact that he just runs up to me and grabs my leg, it warms my heart every single time, because it's like, there's just something just so pure and innocent about a child that they don't have like any ill will. They don't have any, preformed or predisposed thoughts about anything. And so that they choose to run to you, like just out of pure joy is just like, ugh. Like, it's funny because if you would have asked me like 3 months ago, I'd be like, are you ready to have a kid? I would have been like, no. And now I'm like, okay, maybe we'll be having another child soon.
Yeah.
So it's like it's definitely like a phase of like, I don't want kids. Well, sorry.
More.
I don't want more kids. And then once you get over the hump, your baby's not a baby anymore. And you're just like, oh, I miss them being a baby. We could have another baby.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a puppy.
It's exactly like a puppy. It's so funny you say that because there's so many like people who are like, raising kids is not like having dogs. And I can confidently say that it is like having dogs. Dogs are a lot easier. So if you ever like want to know what it's like, dogs are so much easier.
I can't even handle a dog.
And I only say this because my husband was literally a dog trainer. So I'm like, I think I have a great comparison. Kids are so much harder because they're so much more complicated. And like we could train a dog in like 3-4 days, whereas like my son's 1.5 years and he still doesn't listen to me. So that's a big difference. But there's a lot of crossover that can be applicable. But at the same time, like obviously kids are kids and dogs are dogs. Like they're
Vastly
not
different.
They're not the same.
I feel like we're going to have to do a part 2 at some point on this because I feel like I have a trillion questions. I know Anna does too. But I guess for you guys, after having your first son, how did that affect intimacy and how, I guess, what was the transition of going from being pregnant, having a baby to, your body healing and everything like that to then rediscovering intimacy with each other and things like that? Because I would assume there's a large period of time where you're not able to do anything and whatnot. And so,
or want to.
Yeah.
So what was that like?
So luckily, I think for a lot of women, it differs. Depending on how severe their birth experience was, because one side effect of giving birth vaginally is that your skin can tear down there. And there's different degrees of tears. So I think it's like on a scale of like 3 to 4 or something like that. Thankfully, I only had a 1st-degree tear. So it was very small, like not like basically like 1 stitch and it was done. So I didn't have a lot of like trauma. The day after my birth, probably not a very good idea, but I was just up and walking and like walking up and down the stairs. I think I went on a walk outside. Like nothing felt sore, nothing hurt. It was just very much like, yeah, I had a baby. Okay, cool. Yeah, seriously.
Such a freak.
Literally, like my mom was like, are you sore at all? And I was like, no. And like I had stopped, like they had given me like baby aspirin to like help with the pain. And I was like, I'm fine. Like I don't need to take this. So for me, I did not have a lot of trauma down there. So it never felt like, weird or anything. So when it was like the official time that like doctors clear you to have sex, like my husband and I had sex. And I would say the only difference now is like, we can't just be intimate whenever we feel like it. Like it's very much like if our son's awake, if I hear like the tiniest noise from him, my brain is left and I'm immediately like, I'm with him. So, and I think that's been kind of an adjustment that my husband's had to realize because men, they're just like, yeah, we can have sex wherever we want. Yeah, whenever, wherever. And I've had to explain to him, I'm like, if he is awake and I hear the slightest noise, I'm immediately out of it. Like I have to be with my son. I'm like, so we can only be intimate when my son is asleep.
He's like, go to bed.
He's like, you will go to bed or I'll put you to bed.
Giving his kid Benadryl.
Yeah. He's like, you're going to sleep for a long time now.
He's like, you're really tired. Go to bed.
Yeah.
Dad, it's 2 p.m. Go to bed.
So that's been the biggest adjustment. But I do like credit my husband at being the like driving force for our sex life. And I kind of told him that, like, I was like, you're going to have to do this just because I feel like my brain is in a million different places. Yeah. And like, I would like absolutely love to just be the, perfect wife for you that like thinks of everything constantly. I'm like, but it's really hard to think of myself, think of Max and think of you all at the same time. so I'm gonna give you the like captain, the team captain role on this.
He's like, great.
And he's like, at first he was kind of like, I want you to like initiate things, which I'm like, occasionally I will, but like the charging force needs to be done by you. And he's like, okay. And like, it's been kind of an ongoing joke, and he might kill me for sharing this, but like we have this like funny joke between he and I where like he gets golden tickets and like he can use those golden tickets however he wants.
I love that.
And and because like he's so silly and funny, I often accuse him of like fraudulent tickets because he will just make things up and be like, I made you coffee this morning. I got a golden ticket. And I was like,
I love that.
That is not golden ticket worthy.
No, you need 5 of those. 5 coffees.
I'm like, I don't know. I think you got like your like a fake printer that's printing out fake golden tickets.
You should do like a punch card. Like, you know, when you get like a free coffee.
I think we need a physical.
We need to implement a punch card for sure.
Yeah, we need physical tickets because right now he is apparently swimming in golden tickets. And I was like, I don't know how you got that many.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I love that joke. That's great. That's so cute.
To wrap it up, can you give like I don't know, summarize motherhood, summarize like, you know, the beauty of it? Because I do feel like it's one of the most, you know, obviously I haven't experienced it yet, and I know Anna hasn't either.
You'll
but
never
like,
experience
I'll never experience motherhood, but fatherhood or parenthood or
like,
whatever.
That would be really
Not yet.
interesting.
Yeah.
But
the first 2.
But
Yeah.
summarize parenthood, because again, it's such a powerful experience, and
Yeah.
I guess like any words of advice for people who are, you know, debating becoming a parent or are nervous about becoming a parent or anything like that, things that you think they should know.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the scariest decisions I've ever made. I'm not even going to sugarcoat that. But I would do it over and over again because the way that you learn to love your children is like no other. I can't even put into words like how special they are. And I understand how parents become like so delusional. Like I will just randomly catch myself saying to my husband, like, isn't he just so special? And my husband's like, yeah, he's so special. And it's just, it opens up a part of your heart that nobody can like have access to. Like only your child can tap into that. And so if people are thinking about it, obviously I think that, you know, the realistic parameters need to be in place of like, are you in a healthy relationship? Do you feel support from your partner? Like all those things, like, you know, you need to have a solid foundation, and I definitely encourage that. But it's just the best. It's literally the best thing. Like I really thought that, you know, my job and all that kind of stuff brought me joy. And like, I even thought my dog brought me joy, and nothing compared to having a kid. And it's just an extension of you, but everything that you like dislike about yourself or anything like that, like it doesn't matter with your kids. Ugh. Like they are an extension of you in like the best versions. Like if God literally just selected all your best qualities and they're like, we're just going to make a better person. And like, that's your child. You're just like, man, I didn't know that, like, you know, that's what I look like when I smile, like, or like, that's what I look like when I laugh. And it's just, yeah, it's so special.
Oh my God. That was the sweetest answer literally ever.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Damn it.
Well, yeah, we're going to have to run part 2.
Oh, 100%.
Okay,
Yeah. We're going to have you back, and we're going to get Tree on too.
Okay. But well, Mark, I do need to see Mark just do like a half day babysit with Max.
Oh my God.
I love kids.
Mark's
like
good.
yeah, I'm going to be.
We're going to run Mark through the dad gauntlet.
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
it would be nothing for him. Running me through the mom
Okay.
gauntlet,
Are we going to run Anna through
that
the mom
would
gauntlet?
be hell on earth.
This will be a segment. We'll take Max to the zoo and see
Oh my God.
how it goes.
We need to do a zoo date.
Okay.
We still need to do that.
Once Max is good at talking to, we'll have him give a rating. We'll have Anna watch him for a bit. We'll have me watch him for a bit, and he'll give a rating.
Who'd you like more?
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
I'll pay him off. Here Here's $100, buddy. Just you gotta send me.
You just need to give him like a piece of candy or something.
Yeah, easy.
It'll be fine.
Easy.
Easy.
Like
We gotta have Andy on at some point too.
Andy would also love.
I do think fatherhood is something that doesn't get talked enough about.
Yes.
And I've definitely had a lot of private conversations with buddies of mine, and it's like, it's something where I do feel like, again, it's like, you know, it is different, and we're not going to sit here and act like, you know, they go through the birthing process and everything like that. It is different, but like, obviously their experiences and their, you know, thoughts and everything are valid too. And
absolutely.
I think it's something that just doesn't get talked enough about. I mean,
I agree.
It took up until probably the last like 10 years for people to get like, you know, paternity. Right.
Yeah,
and so it's like, you know, it's something where I feel like we're getting to the point of, you know, these conversations are very important to happen, and it's also important to hear from fathers, and
yes.
you know, and so that they can help educate other fathers on kind of what they need to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you like more on that. Obviously, I grew and birthed Max, but at the same time, I know for a fact that without Andy and his influence on Max, like he would not be the same kid, because the importance of, you know, the importance of Andy in Max's life, and just like how important that bond and relationship is. And that's something that Andy and I have talked about so much. And I think there's a lot of pressure, I think, put on guys and fatherhood and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely, it bears a different weight.
Yeah. It's interesting.
We'll definitely have him on. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day to come hang out with us.
Don't say my busy day. I literally
it's your busy day. You're a mom.
Okay. It's like, it also at the same time, it's like busy, but not busy, because we do the same exact thing every single day. But yes, I'm so happy that I was able to come and talk to you guys and catch up on everything.
Yeah, we gotta catch up on life and everything like that too. So
100%.
We'll have to do that. We're gonna go grab lunch, but yeah, appreciate you coming on. Appreciate everybody tuning in.
Yeah, we love you guys. We love you. We love you, and we love all you so much.
Both.
All of it. Everyone's loved.
There we go. We'll talk to you guys soon. See you guys.